Hello everyone. Welcome to Building the Temple. That's what I'll entitle this video. The temple of the body, or the temple of the mind. You know, people hear that the body is the temple. But when you really start to dig at that, you can take it many different ways. Some folks use it as just kind of a symbol for taking care of yourself. So when people say, hey, your body is your temple, they basically saying, don't defame your own health, and don't do things that destroy your body. But the meaning for me is a little bit more on the spiritual side, I guess. And the term, the idea of temple, to me is to build one's faith and strength upon knowledge and information, rather than what a person has been told. And there are a lot of differing opinions on this. Of course, a lot of folks think that, you know, seeking knowledge is sin, and a lot of folks think that not educating yourself is sin. To me, I think that really there's no such thing as sin. I just use that word to, I guess, explain how I feel about right and wrong, in the sense of one doing the best he can for himself, and for the others, for the good of people in general. And the temple is not something that just exists. The spiritual temple of a person, it's not something that you just have to keep kindling. And what I mean is that I think some folks have the idea that you are the temple and that you have to maintain yourself. I see it as the temple has to be built within the self. And I think that the most important thing is to build a strong foundation. It reminds me of this old story about a couple of families that lived in a valley, and they both had to move to this new valley, and they wanted to build their houses. And so the first guy built his house really fast, and because the rains were coming, and he wanted to have it done. So he built the house, got it all finished, and he looked out. It was pouring rain out, and the guy down, across the way, he was still building his house. His family was still in a tent, and they were still, he was getting soaking wet. When the whole thing was said and done, the man finally finished his house. And the other guy said, man, you should have just got it done quicker like I did. Well, the rains came, a flood came, washed away the first guy's house. And the other guy's house was left standing. And it's the old adage, I guess you could call it, what's the word for that? It evades me right now, I can't think of it, but it's one of those stories that we carry, a parable, I guess, in a way, that helps us to understand that rushing through things doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to last. And that's the way I feel about building one's faith. It has to be built on strength. I'm not just talking about faith in religion here. I'm just talking about faith. Faith in mankind, faith that you are who you are, faith in that the way that you're behaving is proper, that the things you're doing are right for you and others. And that has to be built as a foundation. The way I see it is I'm still building my foundation. I mean, I haven't even started on my temple yet. This has been a lifelong, path to learning as much as I can. And not just going to work, thinking about work, coming home, watching TV, and going to bed. Spending every waking moment, that I'm conscious of it. And every moment that I can be self-aware, being self-aware and being aware in my environment. And I've gained so much by doing that, but it's not something that it's something that I have to build on. I'm still building a foundation on self-awareness. I know I've talked to people who say that they've tried to be self-aware after they watched some show or heard something about being aware, and they said it's really hard, I just can only do it for a minute. That is nature. Nature does not want you to be self-aware all the time. Just in the same sense that there is no utopian world where everything's perfect. The balance has to do with perspective. You can't have good without bad. And you can't build your temple without a strong foundation to put it on. So your faith has to be based in reason. And I think that people's, today, there's a lot of conflict coming into play. Not necessarily that people are disputing that everything a person believes in their religion is wrong, but people are creeping in to, say, a Christian and saying, hey, perhaps this doesn't mean what we thought it did. And they're getting shut down, saying, no, this is exactly what this means. For example, this came up, actually. I was thinking about this today when I commented on the video. I was talking about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse and how I don't know what a Christian sees in that. I don't know. A Bible literalist may say there are 4 horsemen that are going to ride across the earth. And there's going to be an apocalypse. And everything is just verbatim. But I heard a different idea of that the 4 horsemen are actually our emotions. So we step back and go, wait a minute, the red horse signifies, sorry, not our emotions, but the different states of man. That the red horse signifies our emotional state. We have an emotional state, a physical state, a mental state, and a spiritual state. And those are the 4 sides of man. And you can't really, those 4 are just tied in, just ingrained in us. And this is the balance, you have to balance each side of the square properly in order for it to be a square. This means that you can't detach from the world completely and become a hermit that has no emotional need whatsoever, because you're ignoring the emotional side, and the involvement with your kind. And likewise, you can't just freak out and cry and over every little issue that happens. You have to control your emotions. So you control your emotions, you control your mind and what you're going to say, and you control your physical being as best you can. And likewise, we should control our spiritual state. And I'm not one to tell anybody what to believe. I'm just here talking about what I think and what's in my mind. But I feel like there's a strong pressure put on society to pick one side or the other, I guess. If you don't have a belief system, then you're nothing. And that's why I think that, when almost an atheist gets more respect than what you would call an agnostic. That's what people tend to call it. Of course, agnostic is, based on the idea of gnosis and knowledge from the Gnostics. So I like to say just a person who exists. One thing I heard today, I can't remember who, it was a famous character in history, and he was asked, what is your profession? And he said, I'm an observer. That resonated with me strongly. I, as well, am an observer, and I can see it's funny when I hear an old man say something like that, I'm an observer. That's watching the world around you and taking in as much as you can. It can be overwhelming at times, and I think that there's also a limit to how much you should be taking in. I mean, any one person can't absorb everything at once. For example, when you're jumping around from subject to subject, trying to learn about spirituality, jumping from a book to a Bible to all these different texts, you get them mixed up in your mind, and you tend to it all bleeds together. Just like when you watch a bunch of movies in a row, or parts of a series of a show, and you just forget everything that happened because you're not really paying attention. In fact, they say that a person, if you're going to pick up and read a book, you should never spend more than, I think they said, like 15 minutes at a time reading, maybe even 10. I'd say half an hour. But if you start reading past then, it's just distraction. You need to take a break in between. The mind, while it picks up everything, it takes a time to absorb it. Sometimes I overwhelmed myself in the history. I listened to a lot of Manly P. Hall, and I got to where I was overwhelmed with all the different new ideas. So now I just listen to maybe one a day, 1 or 2 lectures a day. I spend about 3 or 4 hours listening to either talk radio or lectures or spiritual stuff. I have, all the audio books of various religious texts. I was listening to the Book of Urantia lately, and I find all these ideas are fascinating, but we forget that if you start listening or reading one thing or listening to one person for too long, you get so wrapped up in that you forget that there's another side to the way you can think. For example, I agree with a lot of these people, the way they see the world, like Rupert Sheldrake, Max Eigen. There's a few other guys that they're all in their own little realms, and I agree with a lot of their stuff, but there's still things I don't. And I think that is the key to building your temple the highest, the strongest that it can be, is to really look at everything you're listening to and not agree with it just because you agree with everything else the person says. And we're very pressured in society to go with the flow and to just kind of agree with the group. I mean, look at what the Republicans did to that bill. Everybody's against this thing. Every one of them's going to vote against it, because if you don't, then you're the odd man out. And independent thinking is not allowed in this society. It makes you an outcast. I get so much more flack for the way I think than I would if I was just a guy who liked football, came home, watched American Idol. I'd have conversations to have with people. I'd be able to, quote, fit in to this society if I was willing to put aside my thoughts, my thinking, because thinkers and philosophers it's like a joke in today's society. It's funny because when I was growing up as a kid, I can remember the way that I didn't know what philosophy was when I was a kid. I just know it's thinking and thinking about the world, and the way that I had seen that message conveyed was that philosophers, like, it's a joke. Like, the only reason you would take a class in philosophy or theology or anything like that would be to teach philosophy or theology. And I think that those are things that every single person should have in their knowledge base. Every single person should study these things. It shouldn't be like, okay, he's a philosopher so he can teach other philosophers. Philosophy is not a subject. It's not a type of person. It's not a career. It's a way of life. I would say that philosophy and Buddhism are very closely related. Some may disagree, but an actual Buddhist practice is not a practice at all. You don't have to have the beads and the Buddha and, kill the Buddha. Kill the Buddha. Kill all the Buddhas. That's how you know that you've gone too far, is when you start taking idols. And I don't want to step on anyone's belief system, because I know whenever I say that, people who are Jesus believers, or people who have their faith in Jesus as the true God, the true one, Son of God, they tend to take that the wrong way. And sometimes when I say things, I don't really mean to belittle anyone's belief. I just mean that the way I look at it is different. I have a lot more respect for Jesus than I did in the old days, only because when I was younger, I argued about the Bible, saying, hey, this isn't true, this conflicts with this couldn't be the Word of God because this and this and this. So instead of just getting angry at it, when I started looking at it from a different perspective, and looking at Jesus from a different perspective, I saw that it's not about the book, it's not about the religion. It never should have been about the religion. Nobody should have to go to church. The only reason to go to church is to be with others who are similarly minded. But the only problem with that is that when we do that, we're not learning anything new. We're only learning from the texts or belief system that we already currently believe. I guess what I'm saying is, what would it take for a Christian to finally say, well, this couldn't be true because there's too many conflicts of interest, there's too many things that have been discovered. Instead, a lot will start to lean in things towards, prophecy and whatnot. I've heard this a lot, of the prophecies. I've heard so many people say that all these prophecies have come true in the Bible, and I say, can you please give me one? And I have yet to get one. It's always tailored to a specific event, and it's taken out of context. And I feel the same way about Nostradamus and about a lot of, not saying that Nostradamus wasn't a prophet. I'm saying that the way people take it is always after the fact. Something happens and they say, oh, that must have been the prophecy here. And they try to make it fit. And I think people not only make prophecy fit, but I think that they make their belief systems fit what they want to believe. And if they see something that conflicts with that, they justify it a lot of the time. And I know I do, because that's what humans do. As humans, we justify everything we do to an extent. And there's no man on this earth that doesn't make mistakes and that doesn't lie. You know, I know nobody who is completely truthful and honest all the time. It could be a pretty white little lie. Or, you know, you could just be kind of adding a few on by saying, oh no, I had 20 grand this one time and blah blah blah, when you only had, say, 15 or something. I so many different like little just to make people's egos boost up a little bit. I'm not immune to that. We all do that, and that's the reflection, man reflection of himself. The trick is not to stop making mistakes in life. It's to embrace your mistakes completely and fully and know who you are and say, God, I fucked up. You know, now I have to fix this shit. What am I going to do? Not getting frustrated about it, but be like, what am I going to do? And look at it like a challenge, you know, just like every time you're presented with a problem. You know, I think humans have this issue where we think that if things don't go smooth all day, then we had a shitty day. Oh man, yeah, I got stuck in traffic and I had to go a different way. And, oh, it fucked my whole day up. There's always some reason for that. And maybe you can pull over on the side of the road and take a hike, you know. It might be a memorable day. But let's take a problem more, I guess more, you know, like say you lose your home and you lose your job. And a person can go completely apeshit over that and devastate a person because we associate who we are as people with what we do and what we have. So if your house burned down and you lost your job, how would you fare? You know, I've always tried to compare myself to that state, you know, to that level, and to say that's the state I want to be in, is to where if I came home and everything I had was gone, what would I do? And honestly, I'd laugh it off. You know, I might be bummed I lost a few things, but it doesn't matter. It's just stuff. So by looking at it that way, you're never worried about it. And you're never worried about dying if you're not afraid of the idea of what death brings. And all these different things that you can look at a different way. The reason I say death is because death is the ultimate fear. And I don't know how other people think on this, but it's been my experience that there's nobody immune to the fear of death unless they've convinced themselves so strongly that the afterlife is better than... I've had people tell me that they can't wait to die because they want to go to heaven and be with their family and friends. That's the shameful side to me of that belief, is because I believe in an afterlife and an existence beyond this, but as to what form, I can't comprehend as a human, at least not yet. I mean, maybe you can, but I can't believe that there's a heaven where you go and remain in eternity in a happy place with your family and friends. I don't want that. That's the whole idea. Is it's not that I don't think it's possible, it's that that's not realistic. Nature doesn't want us to be happy all the time because that takes away from the sadness. And sadness is just as important. Just like I said, the balance. And, you know, you want to get the ratios up there to where you're happy more of the time, obviously. But I embrace all my bad emotions and my bad situations because that's just making me stronger every time. And so I feel like my temple, at least half of the first floor is built. And I got the walls up, framed. I got some of the brick up, and I got a tarp over the top of it until I finish the roof, you know. And that's where I want to be in this temple. And I want to build my temple to where when I'm in my older years and I'm aging and I'm almost dead, I can look back and say, wow, I built that thing up, and I didn't fool myself, and I feel great. And if if it's all in vain, and I spend my whole life being involved in all these different ideas and philosophies and theories and religions, and find out that I was wrong the whole time, that's fine too. Because I don't really sense that I could be wrong in that way. Because so many people of history, and this is all I can say, is that, I'm just an individual. I'm 37 years old. I've experienced what I've experienced, and I'm totally different than you or your family or your friends. Every single person is different, of course. But I don't know what's going to happen or how I'm going to feel when I get older, what's true. All I'm going by is what my ancestors and some of the most famous people in history are my inspirations. Descartes. We've got fucking I can't even, all the good, all the good philosophers. Of course, there's a whole bunch of them, but all the way up until like the 17th century, some of the like Francis Bacon and John Dee. These are people that are kind of on the occult side of the world, and a lot of people dismiss them outright, saying, "Oh, they're satanic." And I don't, since I don't believe in Satan, I obviously don't cater to that. I see it as just another form of understanding. But I think if the dark forces really exist, then we need to learn and understand them just as much as anything else. By ignoring things, they don't go away. A lot of people say, don't dabble in that, because then you'll get possessed by a demon or Satan or whatever. No, I don't believe that. I think that you have to get your hands dirty in order to clean them off and to understand. You can't wipe your hands clean of something you've never felt, and or read about, or even have an idea about. Strength by educating ourselves on it. But these people, these enduring persons of history, are people that we need to listen to what they've written. I mean, Socrates. Socrates never wrote anything down in his life, but Plato, who was one of his students, after Socrates died and before, he wrote a lot, and he documented a lot of Socrates' work, thank goodness. And sometimes people hear these old men say these quotes from old ancient times, and when you hear them, like, well, to be or not to be, or, like one-liners kind of thing, and like people think, either you can think, God, that's just so shallow, that's so obvious, or you can think, how deep, how deep. And but anyway, these people spend their entire lives on the same mission that I'm on. The only difference was that they had a lot less literature and information at their disposal than I do. I can go online, and it doesn't mean that what I find is true, but it means that if I want to find the writings of an ancient author, I don't have to, have the book cameled across mountains and make sure it doesn't get wet, and it's just something that's right at my disposal, and that can be kind of actually work against you if you're not careful. But what I'm saying is that I can already look at all these people. I can put like 20 ancient philosophers side by side. Look at their lives, look at what they wrote, and compare notes. I mean, in my head, of course. Every time you hear something that resonates, that you hear from a different person than a different person, you take that to heart and learn that that's important in life. That's all that I'm saying, is that that's the most important thing, is to listen to our elders and what they tell us. There's nothing more important to me than what elders think. And, it's sad when people are like, oh, stupid old man, Some of these old guys are like... they fought in World War II, and they started businesses that today are massive, multi-billion-dollar corporations. Of course, they're not in their hands anymore. What I'm saying is, some of these people have seen things come and go, and a lot of things come and go, and they can tell us which things are cyclical, which things really endure. For example, if you're 20 and you say, "Oh man, life's getting crazier. Everything out in society is getting gnarlier. Every year things are getting worse and worse and worse. Well, when you're 18, 20, it's easy to see it that way because your life is increasing. Your life is changing. And then gradually you get to 30, and then you move towards 40. And everything starts to kind of taper off, and you realize, well, that was my own intensity. This is just an example. But then you listen to, say, our parents or our grandparents who say, oh yeah, they said the same thing back then. And you know, the world was going to end in 2000. You know, I remember that whole Y2K thing. The world was going to end in 1950. The world was going to end in 1900. Every single decade, it seems that there's another end of the world date. So you know, when I hear elders say, well, they just do that every, you know, they all do that. Well, it helps me to work my life towards where I don't have to worry about shit. You know, think the world's ending or whatnot. But the most important thing to me is when I listen and people tell people on their deathbed, old people on their deathbed, who have done wrong in their life, and the guilt that they hold on their faces, and the things that I've been told that they say. You know, haven't spent much time with old people on their deathbed, but the folks who I have talked to about it say, yeah, all he said was he cried and said, I wish I'd been happier. I wish I just enjoyed what I had. And most importantly of all, I wish I would have loved my family more. So what's the most important thing in this world to a person who has a family? It's his family. And if you don't have a family of your own, you don't understand until you have one. And so it's really, you know, it's almost like the people that say, I don't want to have kids, you know, well, everybody says that at one time in their life. It's just like, I don't want to get married. It's just buying into the system. And you know, I gradually worked past it and found reasons to get married because it was important to me. And that was just a change in opinion over the years. Not a big wedding, just a little cheapo hangout on the beach with some blankets. It was great. But the views that we have change constantly. And in the older generation, in the elders, they've already been through that. And they have their own perspectives on what's the most important thing in life. And it's always family. There is nothing that makes me happier in life than hugging my kids and my wife and just like laying on a bed watching a movie or something with my family. There's nothing I miss more than my family when I leave home. When I'm at work, I just can't wait to get home and see my kids. And that type of unconditional love is very, very important. And I think that everybody needs to have some of that love in their life, whatever it may be. You know, if you don't want to have kids, or you can't have kids, and you can't adopt, and you can't find a wife or a husband, you know, at least make a good friend. Somebody you can really hug. Because human contact is so important. Anyway, my children are my life, and it's a phenomenal thing to have. And that love, when I hear old people talk about how they missed that, or they worked too much, I wish I would have spent more time because I was so busy working to make money that I forgot what the money was for. It was for my family. You know, I feel really bad for the kids who have parents who travel. Or, you know, the dad's gone for a week at a time or something. There's the most important times in a kid's life, you know. And it's not always the parent's choice, you know. They get stuck in a job. Me, honestly, I would take a pay cut and work at McDonald's if I had to, if that's what it took to be home with my family every night, because I can't be away from them for even a night or two. And so anyway, I'm getting off track with the family thing, but my point was that the elders are always saying that the families are the most important thing. And so if we listen to these people and the things that they say, we can learn a lot from them, piece that all together and help it work on ourselves. Not have to go through 80 years of living to learn one thing that somebody already learned. But of course you can't just take everybody's, you know, what's important to them for, you know, gospel. But when many people, many old philosophers say the same thing, then you can start to note that in your mind. So what's important to me in life? How do I build my temple? Because I better finish this up. This is getting long, and nobody will probably watch the whole thing. I don't care, but how do you build your temple? And how am I building my temple? My first part of the temple is based on experience and living my life and doing all the fun things so I can have an opinion on them. Second was my resistance towards the system, which I resisted the system from my teen years up until my early 30s. And then gradual acceptance, going with the flow. And at that point, you almost have your foundation. When you go with the flow, everything works for you. But some people try it and it doesn't work right away, and there are exceptions to the rule. So go with the flow, and then you're not fighting, and then you have more energy. So after that, you build yourself a family or a group, friend group, a base where you can love someone, and then you can take that love and learn to love yourself. And some people can never get past that one. Loving yourself is just ego to some people. They're like, oh, I don't like myself. I don't like the way I look. I don't like the way I have so many fucking issues. God, I need a shave. My teeth are fucked up, but I'm on a video making one where I'm in people's face, and I just don't care, But there's a certain limit where you have to look presentable, right? I mean, obviously not going to come out and be like, hey dude, and like mumbling and fucked up and just out of bed. So there are limits, to what's important there. But once you love yourself to where you don't have to feel awkward or feel conscious, hide your smile or when you laugh or, all those things are things we do as humans. And so once I worked past that, that was the first stage. Love myself, and then when I completely, at least to an extent, love myself, you're never going to love everything about yourself. I have many issues with motivation problem. I have motivation problems, and I have all these ideas that I want to do when I get home, and I don't do them. I'm lazy, in a lot of ways. Like the only time I'm really animated is when I'm like really doing my videos, because I love to just talk about life. And so once I built that and I got that comfort with the family, and then I'm comfortable with myself, then I love the world. And after I love the world, then, only then, when I really love people unconditionally, all of them, which that's never going to happen either, not 100%. But I mean, to even take some of the harshest, meanest people and still listen to what they have to say. I've learned so much more than fighting against it, because you need to know every side of the story in order to make an accurate, informed decision. So only after loving the self, then loving others, can you truly listen to others without thinking of yourself as superior. And the final part is the connection between all of us, to realize that you and I are the same person. You may listen to this video and think, God, he's full of shit. And he may be right. But you and I are the same person. We are the same entity with a different personality within that mind. So there's no black and white. There's no everybody needs to be unified and the same so we're all happy, and there's no people need to all fight against each other or pick a side. It's just to each his own. And it seems to be getting more confusing as we go as to how to build our temple. Back in the day they could build it quick because all they had was what they were told. This is what my parents told me, and this is what my neighbors confirm, so this is what I believe. Boom, done. But there's got to be something nagging at the back of your mind. If you've built your temple on just preconceived notions about the way that you've been told things are, or that you think they might be, and then you run into something in life that conflicts with that, that must tear people apart. For example, if you have a very strict religious belief, and then you see something that goes against what you believe, it's got to be hard to, so what do you do? The best, you got to restructure every part of it as you see fit. And that's that. So I don't know what else to say except I hope everybody out there has the drive and the time in their life to take a few minutes each day to visualize yourself as a happier person. Because conquering the fear of death is the first step. That was one that I really had a hard time with. When you're young, you realize you're going to die, and you think about it, even as a teenager. But a lot of people don't really. I think that's what the midlife crisis is for some people. You get to in your 30s or 40s, and you start thinking, oh shit, I'm halfway towards the end, and oh shit, what am I going to do? I haven't built up this and that, and that's how I could get, that's what I had a problem with. Like, oh, look at me, I'm just a carpenter, I haven't done anything with my life. And now, 5 years later, after that issue that I had, I was just like, I was depressed for a while, stressed out, anxious, taking Xanax and Valium and anything I could get my hands on to relax. And I realized it was all mental. I was creating it all out of this hidden fear of the unknown. And so once I, owned up to that it just ended. It is what it is. We're all gonna die. It's just the way it is. And I think that the midlife crisis tends, that's why people go out and buy a lot of stuff, buy a fancy car, or a motorcycle, things I never had, or, I never got to do this, I never got to do that, and we start to feel like we're getting too old to do stuff. And I'll tell you something, I'm almost 40, and a lot of guys my age would never change careers after doing carpentry for 15 years or whatever. But, I'm thinking about moving on, doing something different, might get into writing, or, I consider getting into like radio or some sort of a, underground kind of alternative thing and start doing some research and really, but being able to move and do anything I want, I don't feel like I'm tied down because I've opened that part of myself up, and everybody can do that. Just don't label yourself as a carpenter. Don't label yourself as a fast food worker or a person who drives this kind of car, or a white person, or a female, or a male. You're just a person. You're an entity that can go do other things, whatever you want. Try something. If you're stuck on a job you don't like, try something. Go on Craigslist and apply for a job that you want, and just bullshit that you have the experience. If it's something you think you could pull off, and try it, and see how it works. What's the worst that could happen? They don't think you're fit, so you get fired. It's, just little things like that. We put ourselves in the classes because I couldn't do that because I'm in this class. There are no classes in motivation. Just do it. So, enough said. Peace and love to everybody, and I really thank everybody who has such awesome comments, and such respectful, comments on my videos, and deep thought-provoking things, and I just love it. That's what I'm doing here. That's what I'm here for. Somebody mentioned, I made this random video a while back. Somebody said, "You're not going to get many subs from making this video." I said, "I'm not trying to get subs. That's not my game here. If subs come, then subs come. But I'm happy with the group of friends that I talk with." So, anyway, peace to everybody, and build that temple up. Get yourself a good foundation.